That's right, everybody. Welcome to the Zenjaverse, to the very special edition extended Q&A Ep.3 X-Gallery special. We're going to start this off with an appropriately titled track called Contact by the amazing Galactic Groove. That's right, Jeremiah Jones, with a guest vocal by yours truly. Hold on for the show. Yo, we calling out Elon for sandbagging. You know, we know, you know, let's do this.
Starless night, you see the lights shine on you, piercing through, like the sound, make you move. Funky bang, galactic groove, non-humans from the black craft, hover silent over you. Contact, got your back, funky bang, galactic grooves. Starless night, you see the lights shine on you, piercing through, like the sound, make you move. Funky bang, galactic grooves, non-humans from the black craft, hover silent over you. Contact, got your back, funky bang, galactic grooves. Genetically switching up the helix for the contact. Weapons weak, quick us no good against the bees. They don't use books, they don't use words. Communicate inside your herd. While you're hiding in Mount Shasta, we the aliens to blast ya. Fingers are easy to live tease with ease oh please. I'm SR6, y'all Ep.3. That's Revere for me, we say. Yeah, that's Revere.
So how can we talk about the alien basis when all these children running around races? How can we talk about Jesus clean energy when even my family don't act like friendly me?
Hey, that's my question. Yeah, Toto hiding Dorothy's, get your bikes and dodge tornadoes. We are riding gravity into the night, and that's okay though. Toto hiding Dorothy's, get your bikes and dodge tornadoes. We are riding gravity into the night, and that's okay though. That's right, starless night, see the light shine on you, listen through, like the sound, make you move, funky bang, galactic grooves. Yeah. Don't get too close, don't go too far, you know too much like Bob-Azar. Don't get too close, don't go too far, you know too much like Bob-Azar. Nothing to prove, nothing to show you, don't ask me, just ask for her. Nothing to prove, nothing to show you, don't ask me, just ask for her. Yeah, we be flowing, yo, we bob big glowing. Contacting, galactic grooving. Contacting, come through, got your back. Choo-choo. That's right, contact, galactic grooving. Contacting, come through, got your back. Choo-choo. Starless night, you see the light shine on you, piercing through, like the sound, make you move, come through, bang, galactic grooves. Huh? Not humans from the black craft, hover silent over you. Contact, got your back, come through, bang, galactic grooves. Starless night, see the light shine on you, piercing through, like the sound, make you move, come through, bang, galactic grooves. Not humans from the black craft, hover silent over you. Contact, got your back, come through, bang, galactic grooves. Yeah, choo-choo. Galactic grooving, body movers moving, contacting. Come through, got your back.
Genetically twisting up the helix for the contact. Weapons we fisted cuffed with good against the V-Jack.
What's true, everybody? I'm so excited today. Today is the special extended Q&A for the all your questions, ET and NT. Super excited about that. But first, we have a lot of other fun stuff to get to. We are going to do some Starseed Submissions. We're going to get back to the oldest tricks in the book, page 2. I guess that makes it the second oldest trick in the book. We're going to go ahead and cover that. We will get to your Q&A. We have a wonderful interview coming in the back. Maybe not so surprising individual come and share some of their wisdom and love and knowledge with all of us here at the Zenjaverse. And we have a very special call out to a wonderful, wonderful wonderful person who I want everybody to meet. And so it's going to be my pleasure to have her on the show as soon as I possibly can, if she's so inclined. So we'll get to that call out there. By the way, what'd you think of that track? I'll put a link below. Galactic Groove is amazing. I want to put vocals on one of his tracks, Do It Right. So JJ, if you're out there, man, I would love to get together with you as soon as possible. So that'd be fantastic. So anyway, thanks for joining. Of course, we'll have music too. So I guess we'll just jump right into the next segment. Starseed Submissions. Okay, so we have a spectacular Starseed submission here today. Truly in the spirit of the cosmic Sesame Street we live in. And also the spirit of making a better world. So this one here is amazing. It's called Awesome Place. It's a dream world where humans and non-humans all get along. It looks like there's a dance club. It was written down there that no one is richer than the other guy. Oh my gosh, that's amazing. It's just, I find that just adorable. So it looks like we live in a world there where everyone's getting along. It doesn't matter what you look like, what shape your head is, if you're white, black, brown, blue, or gray. We're all just getting along and dancing. Oh my goodness, that is an awesome place. Truly a dream world. I look forward to that happening someday. Is that pizza growing on trees? Oh my goodness. That is just fantastic. Thank you so much for that submission. Fun, right? So we're going to go ahead and jump into, because I know you were waiting for it for the last 2 weeks, oldest tricks in the book. Okay, oldest tricks in the book. So if you haven't seen the first trick in the book, go back and check out episode 1 of the Zenjaverse and check out Look Badger. But trick 2, second oldest trick in the book. Oh, it's a classic. Here it is. You two fight. Trick 2 is you two fight. I can tell you, having read all the oldest tricks in the oldest books, that this one works so well. It goes like this. Let's say, for instance, you're a bad guy, and regardless of the fact that you got mass quantities of gold at your feet, you want the 2 beneath Mr. Red and the 4 over there beneath Mr. Blue. Now, they weren't originally Mr. Red and Mr. Blue, but what you needed to do was get these 2 guys to get rid of each other so you could get their gold, see? Or their house, or any kind of other property, their women and children, whatever. You're a bad guy, right? So what you got to do is you got to convince these guys that they're each other's enemy. Now, these 2 cats could easily just turn around, conk that fool behind them, right? You got an axe, you got a sword, team up. You could get rid of the bad guy and get your gold back, right? But if he convinces you that you're a Republican, you're a Democrat, you're white, you're black, all that matters, young, old, rich, poor, you create classes, divisions, parties, and all that kind of stuff. And you can get these 2 people to fight. Well, pretty soon they're going to all be half dead and need to borrow your money to finance more wars. This applies in so many places. Look around, fam. So I hope you learned something from that. Those things always apply to daily life. Those aren't just old tricks. Those old tricks still work. So let's not get Copperfielded. Let's not get Penn and Tellered. Stay aware. Okay, so here it is, the long-awaited Q&A section. So I received so many questions over the last several months. It's one of the things that motivated me to do the show. And when people find out that I spent decades inside secret space programs, and I've been around non-humans my whole life, and it's not weird to me at all to talk about spaceships and, Arcturians and whatnot. That's just my normal life. And it's the same is true for hundreds of millions of people. It's not strange to us. There are 8 billion people out there who don't know what we know. And last I read that the studies show, the polls taken that I've read, say that approximately 70% of the world's population already believes in UFOs and non-humans, and that we're not alone in the universe. 70%, 7 out of 10 people already believe that. Of this 8 billion that aren't sure, well, yeah, I'm just here to give you the Zenjo stampo facto of approval that that's real. You're correct. You are right. 7 out of 10 people who believe that we're not alone in the universe, and they've already been here. y'all are correct. So let's get into that. So people will ask me a lot of questions about that. They want to know about, what's it like to speak with a non-human? What are the different kinds of non-humans? Are they good? Are they bad? Are they different? Things like that. So why would they choose to talk to certain people and not others? What's the history behind that? There's a lot of really good questions. And like I said before, I'm super sweet to talk about it. But I just know that with this kind of information, when we're trying to kind of redisclose this information, it can be disconcerting, to say the least. It triggers a lot of people, but I don't think it has to. It does not. You have to understand that there's a lot of people that know about this, and it didn't change their religion. It didn't cause them to lose sleep at night. All it did was clarify the situation, and that's what we're trying to do, because knowledge is power. Knowledge is power. So I want to say that a lot of people who are watching this video probably already know that a lot of people besides myself have come out with this information, that we're not alone, and that the government, a lot of sectors of the government have known for a very long time, and kept promising the people on the inside, oh yeah, we'll disclose, we'll tell everybody, and it just never seemed to happen. This has been going on for 70 years, right? So what gives? Good question. Why didn't it come out? Why is it that you have 200 people, and was it 2001, went to the National Press Club, was that right, in Washington, D.C.? We're talking guys like Paul Hellyer, and the list goes on, people, military brass and scientists coming out with proof, just hundreds of people with real documents from the CIA, from NASA, from military programs, just willing to die to share this information with the world. I came out and dumped it, and it seems like nothing has changed, right? We've been disclosing they disclosed on CNN, MSNBC, the Department of Justice. They were releasing UFO footage in, what was it, November, December of 2017? On TV, right? But nothing's changed, because we still haven't seen the motherships, right? Well, and we still don't have clean energy, which is what this is about, is no more blood for oil wars. Stop compartmentalizing all this important knowledge so that we can have the good medicine we need. We can have the transparency in government we need. We don't need any more petroleum products. We don't need that, So what gives, right? We have to get there, right? We have to take this knowledge that's been hidden and compartmentalized by secret societies for so long. We have to get that knowledge and that information out to people. And the thing is, again, it's super important. You don't want people to disconnect. You don't want people to get scared. I will tell you for sure that my grandfather was a devout Christian, and he knew about extraterrestrials and stuff. He was in on it too, and we didn't talk to other people about it in our family. But I asked him one day, I stepped to him, I said, Grandpa, he's a Christian. So I asked him about how he felt, like how that affected his religious perspective. The fact that he knows that we're not alone and that kind of thing. And without missing a beat, he said, aliens got nothing to do with Jesus. Just like that. He separated his spiritual path, right, and his relationship with Source from this head knowledge of science, technology. It didn't in any way impede him from feeling connected to Source and wanting to follow a certain spiritual tradition and example. And you want to know what? He was an amazing gentleman. He was amazing. His dad was a full-on minister, Now, I'm not personally a religious person, but I can tell you that within the spectrum of people who know about this all over the world, no, we're not alone. There are they come from all walks of life, and most of us sleep well at night. So it doesn't. I don't want anybody to trigger or to get lost. I just think that this knowledge is important. I'm certain of it, and a lot of people, thousands of people, have tried to get this information out in lots of different ways and gotten and have disappeared in the process of trying to do so. Most folks are tied up in non-disclosure agreements, or they're involved in some secret society situation. There's security clearances, there's blackmail, there's a lot of interested powers. They don't want us to have that knowledge or that technology, so they'll do anything to keep it to themselves, meaning the bad guys, the corruption at the top of these secret programs. Even though there's a lot of good soldiers and stuff working in these programs who joined because they wanted to do what's right, they have had to take bad orders and keep secrets that they don't want to keep, right? So, Q&A with Zenja, Q&A with Zenja, extra special Q&A with Zenja. The question is, how can we know that aliens, non-humans, extraterrestrials exist? How do we have any proof? Can we see some examples? The questions are, when did they get here? How did they affect our evolution, our process? Let's do that. I prepared a piece. I hope you enjoy it. So, first, the rules. I've made a lot of mistakes in disclosing this information to people over the years. My sincere apologies. Sometimes it's good to say a few things first before you go diving into this heavy information, kind of change your whole mental perspective in your world. So, number one, watch your breath. Always good advice. Just stay centered, just information. Two, the choice to know will always be yours. You only have to go as deep as you want, and just remember that you want to absorb and digest what is useful and move on. Number three, don't believe me. Do the research. I'm just some guy on the internet, right? Like, this is just clues for you, someone who's been around this his whole life. This isn't strange to me, to kind of point you in the direction to what's available out there. So just do your research. It's good. It's fun. Number four, no amount of information can undo God's plan, break science, or eliminate your free will. Now, a lot of people get scared here and think it might shake their whole scientific or religious perspective, but it doesn't have to. It just clarifies, okay? So we're good. Which leads us to number five, which is sleep well tonight. Dream big, really big. Your world is just getting bigger with this information. Knowledge is power, and always remember, love wins. So it's also going to be helpful to have some new vocabulary. The new words I want to throw at you, you can just stick in the back of your brain. Is kind of an answer to the question, is it God, is it evolution? Well, why isn't it both, right? So we're just going to call that source evolving. It's both a noun and a verb, so there's that. Also, the next word is numanity, which is what we're calling this new awakening, integrated human society on Midgard. It started around what people think of as the end of the Mayan calendar in December of 2012. So if we think of a beginning, kind of a source and center of the universe, or a Big Bang kind of idea, mental picture in our mind, we can think of in the beginning of the universe, life began to evolve way before there was ever an Earth or a Midgard or a Gaia. And so in the beginning, this light, this movement, this sound became, it evolved into these different beings, many of them hominid. It works very well in our three-dimensional physics of this universe. So 5 billion years ago, you had Arcturians, you had Sirians coming, and then later on you had Andromedans as the universe expanded, so to speak. And that sentient source light kind of filled everything in the universe. The whole universe is really, truly awake and aware. So eventually you have this planet, just to make it somewhat short, that we call Midgard. And upon it, humanity has grown. And so we have not been around nearly as long as many of the other species in the universe. So they were here investigating this planet before we were really, truly any kind of awake or three-dimensional consciousness, So when you think of it, that, modern humanity, we can kind of, a lot of places to slice it, but let's go back about 110,000 years. We've had this human species as we know it. Whereas a lot of other species have been around a lot longer watching us and that kind of thing. By the way, Earth is also called Sol 3, Urantia, Gaia, Terra, that kind of thing. So when you look at our planet, when you look at Midgard, on the crust, there's this surface area where all these like humans live. It's a super dangerous place to live, right? You got weather and floods and pole shit. I mean, crazy stuff can happen. You can get smashed by rocks. So it's way smarter to live underground, way smarter, where you're not subject to all this cataclysm and whatnot. So, and enemies can't get to you. So around 300 to 600 kilometers below the surface, the Earth is pocketed with all kinds of caverns the size of states and cities. I mean, seriously, there's caverns the size of Texas down there. There's, last I heard, around 24 underground oceans, whereas on the surface we only have around 7, right? So that's kind of how that is. There's so many species down there, and they've been around there not getting rinsed every 13,000 years, as there's a 26,000 year breath, so to speak, movement of the universe in a cycle on the cosmic clock. So every 13,000 years we're kind of getting wrecked, while down there they're chilling, not getting wrecked. Okay, so so a lot of non-humans live down there of all sorts. So there's 8 billion people up here who don't really know about what's going on down there, and a few 100 million non-humans down there. And those numbers work well in describing as well that only about 8 billion people know about this on the surface, and about a few 100 million do know on the surface. Now, so I guess I drew the explosions and the volcanoes. Everything's getting wrecked. So every 13,000 years, humans are essentially having to rebuild, even though the Illuminati tries to put about 144,000 underneath to keep them safe. You got these underground species that might go 16 million years without having any interruption in their evolutionary cycle. So you have these underground entities who had, spaceships before the pyramids were ever built. Okay? So that's a little close up there. All different kinds. We're safe. We've been here for a long time, just observing, in a lot of ways, as well as other things. So this is an old photograph. It's really hard to get photographs of this stuff out. This came from Russia. And a lot of people would look at this from the inside and go, oh, that's a serious A Zeta Reticulum gray, right? Well, that does look like that to a lot of us. Much older species in our own. Yeah, that's a very famous picture. I just want to let you look at some of these images. Here's another side view. Here's another view, a side shot of this particular person. And, we just call them people. And this came out of Russia again. This was released by Ivan0135 like 11 years ago. And I would just, it's famous. And I'll leave a link. You got to watch the footage because this is live. You can see these in movement. These are just stills. You can watch these in movement in the link I'll leave below. Now you look over here and it looks the same. It's not. A lot of people would look at that, and I might be incorrect, but we would say that looks like more like a Sirius B gray. Again, Sirian Zeta Reticulum in origin. The hominid structure as well as the insect and reptilian structures work very well in our universe, so that a lot of stuff looks kind of like us. I mean, having hands and fingers and big brains is good at anywhere in this universe. Now, these guys weren't supposed to get pictures taken of them, and they realized it. There's protocols. You're not supposed to take pictures of these guys. There's rules for this stuff. And these guys just realized that they were getting filmed, and they're having a little moment. They're looking at each other like, what? Or whatever they're thinking. But that didn't go well. It broke protocols and caused problems. Again, look at the link. Now, here we go. So unfortunately, a lot of the footage we get, or the images we get, are of non-humans in medical conditions, because we're not supposed to interact just randomly. What ends up happening is military personnel will often shoot down their craft. That's what that is. They shoot the craft down and recover the bodies, which is why you see, unfortunately, it's sad. My heart goes out to I don't know. This person here that we see in this medical condition, my heart goes out to them. I don't know. It doesn't look weird to me to see this stuff. Same with this poor creature. Looks like in a very sad state of affairs. But that's the images we have available quite often, because you're not really supposed to take pictures until a certain time or in a certain way. Again, there's protocols of these things. Our interactions between species are very regulated. So these are kind of things that sneak out when the craft are shot down. But they're not all exactly hominid or gray looking, you know. Some of them, now this would be reported in the mainstream media as about a, you know, like a 250-year-old, you know, Moa claw. It's not. Moa went extinct like 1,000, 1,200 years ago. There are saurian reptiloid creatures down there. Look at paleontologists that discovered this, basically like a raptor a few years ago that has 6 times the cranial capacity of a normal raptor. Yeah, there's a reason for that. But people see this stuff and they like draw it in old books. This is the Codex Gigas, which is like this old Vatican book that like went through Germany and Belgium, I believe. Anyway, like you see one of these things underground and it looks like the devil to you, so they draw them and it looks goofy in that book, but straight on they kind of look like that. This here is a guy calling himself Anunnaki. I just had to put this guy in. I know it seems random, but are you kidding me? No, this is not a real Anunnaki, but there are people out there who are trying to, like, you know, share this information in their music, and it's more common than you think. But I think people were more looking for an image like this. The Nephilim and the giants and these ancestors of ours that have very similar but different genetics are all throughout our history. It's just, again, it's kept very secret. So you can see some of these images. It's hard to find the original photo credits sometimes for these things because a lot of people are claiming it, and a lot of times they come from secret places. So what happens is these things get smuggled out by insiders and they blast them all over the internet. And I gotta say a big shout out to like Mr. MBB333, Bright Insight, the guys at Secure Team. A lot of people are doing a really good job collecting this stuff. So throughout history, you do have evidence of these things. This one's a classic. A lot of people are probably looking at my little gray buddy down there, but I'm actually looking at the Tet and the Ankh, or what Freemasons would call the Crux Ansata, on the mechanism that the Egyptian fellow there is wielding. Here's some more what you would think was classic gray, but you notice it looked pretty different. And look at this poor guy, again, in condition. Look how cold he is. This human gentleman had to give him his jacket because they're cold. They're not meant to be here. It's strange for their bodies. And this looks more like a hybrid, but I could be wrong. You know, there's so much hybridization throughout. So I didn't take these pictures myself. I can't say 100% for sure, but I would put money on these pictures that they're legit, because as someone who's been around these things in real life with my own two, you know, eyes, I am telling you this stuff looks legit to me. So I wanted to go back to this cute little fella and just say that, again, it speaks to the fact that they've been around a long time, and so people often ask about the hybridization aspect and how we've been affected. Well, I can tell you that scientists inside who've been studying this for a long time will tell you that most human beings are between 99%, 96% what you would think of as human. And the other percentage, we vary throughout, are going to be affected, our DNA is affected by input from Pleiadians, Draconians, Nephilim, etc., some lovely Arcturian in there, and that our DNA is actually a unique fractal antenna that both receives and transmits our unique consciousness energy, which is typically 5th dimensional, whereas our DNA is 3-dimensional. So, but some of us are lovely and wonderful, and some would say far more hybrid than most. This is a lovely, beautiful, amazing person by the name Vivian Chauvet, who is only about 47% human and 53% Arcturian. And she's a lovely, wonderful woman. So some people have a much more predominant, what people think of as extraterrestrial heritage. She uses that energy in her unique DNA, in her unique memory consciousness, and in her light, her sentient light, and she brings it to the table by aligning and harmonizing with that Arcturian energy from her ancestry, and she's able to share in an amazing way. So basically what I wanted to say there is that we're all affected by this, and we always have been, but you'll notice that we're all still here. And you'll notice that I've known about it my whole life, and I'm very joyful. I'm a joyful person. But again, I was raised around it, and so when they start you as a kid, you're used to speaking to non-humans, you're used to seeing them, and it can be more difficult for people who are older to digest this information. So I thought it would be good to point this out and allow people to recognize that it's just more, it's more science to incorporate into what into your research, into your understanding, in your inner standing, because we have to align this information, not just collect it in our brains, but align it with our hearts and our action. It has to move us lovingly into action, and really create a sense of compassion, because a lot of us would like to see this really like a cosmic Sesame Street, really, where we all get along, and it's just not that time yet, because people have a lot of human things to work out, and the non-humans would really like us to elevate ourselves as a species so that we can kind of join them openly, as opposed to speak to them personally, just one-on-one with people who are ready, so to speak, to do so. This stayed compartmentalized for so long, but really a lot of people know now and are really ready to share it. And I would say that one of the biggest questions is, are we safe? Yeah. Or is the mothership coming? They're not going to come solve it. No, they're going to watch us solve it. And that's what's going to happen. And when I say solve it, I mean fix the fighting and the humanitarian crises we face, and destroying this planet. And nobody wants to see that. Non-humans, all of God's creatures, all of Source's creatures, really do love cooperation and compassion. And you can sleep well tonight knowing that you're safe in this way, and that your enemy is mostly in the mirror. And it's like that for non-humans as well. So if we let ourselves take this information in a way, and we grow from it, and we realize that we're not alone in a good way, and that we have a lot of support in certain ways, and we're being observed by some really loving creatures, and maybe some that aren't so loving. But again, there are peace treaties in place, there are protocols in place that don't allow them to interfere with our stuff to any greater degree, even if they may have more so in the past. So without making this super long, I hope that answered a few things, and thank you so much for asking your questions and letting me take the opportunity to answer them. So I really hope that answered some questions. I'm sure it just created a bunch more. That's how that stuff works. There's so much information. It takes thousands of hours of research to kind of get the whole picture. There's so much to it, and hopefully you feel encouraged and you feel more knowledgeable. And again, don't believe me. That's perfect if you don't. I think it's important not to go around just believing folks. Whoa, I believe that's loud. You don't want to just believe some dude on the internet. You want to research. You want to look into these things. When you go back and you look at all the quotes from those astronauts and, Jimmy Carter and Mikhail Gorbachev and those guys about the existence of aliens, that's just part of the research. I'm just one more guy saying it's real, folks, So yeah, research it from a loving heart space. Never be afraid. Fear is not what this is about. This is about love. This is about connection. This is about building bridges. This is about removing a bunch of conspiracy theory nonsense away, and just taking the truth that those people are looking for, the facts, the data that those people are looking for, and just bring it out in another way. And so that it's no longer weird to talk about it, because it can't be anymore. We have to accept our history. We have to accept reality, and then take that information and do good, loving things with it, regardless of who we are or where we come from. So do send in more questions. I'm happy to answer them. We'll cover a lot more details. I think a lot of people probably want to know about how spacecraft works and some more of the technology and stuff, and that's great. But me, I'm always frustrating folks, because I always want to talk about banking, and I want to talk about funding, and I want to talk about humanitarian projects. But that's what that's about. It's kind of like, people who know me have heard me say this plenty of times over the years. It's like aliens, schmalians. God bless them all. Source bless them all. But this isn't about that. This is about humanity and what we're doing right now to level up as a species, to integrate, to become one thing, to end division, end the fear, stop competing, start cooperating, stop serving ourselves so much, and remember to serve others, to harmonize, to sing a song together as humanity, as one thing, to be our whole selves, to thrive, not just survive. Right? That's what this is about. And I just, you got this long lost brother Zenja who's been out there just banging on this for over 40 years. And I'm telling you, you can survive all the madness that's associated with it and digest it, process it. It can take a minute. But ultimately, I want this to bring us together, and I want to build a bridge between what seems so spacey and what's really down here. So do dig into the parts that you're interested in. If you have more questions on that, hit it up. On that note, we should probably move on to the interview section. Thank you so much for going through that. I'm really excited to hear what's next. Are you? Secret surprise coming up.
That's right. Amicus rhyme schooling. Zenja got something to say. An anthem for the lost year. Maybe they got to me or I got to myself. But now Majestic 12 has me up on a shelf. Yeah, all this black medicine, it seems to never end. And now they have my bones, and now they're making clones. My blood is indigo and so my lips are sealed. I'm a casualty of soft disclosure, waiting for the big reveal. I'm like a moon shadow, I'm like a blue beam, I'm like a Pegasus, another feather in the wing. I'm like a moon shadow, I'm like a blue beam, I'm like a Pegasus, another feather in the wing. And so it's to the moon and off to Mars, bringing duality and war into the stars. There's so much life below us, such ancient life below us. Don't wait for the ice to melt, it polls and governments to show us. I've lived so many lives, so Matrix has survived. No reason to believe, especially my eyes.
No reason to believe, especially my eyes. I'm made of time and secrets, into my rhymes I sneak it. I'm made of secrets and time, so I sneak truth in rhymes. Yeah.
I swim in all dimensions, in bubbles void of time. Infinity in all directions, gravity with coffee wines. Yeah, yeah. That's right, I said the polished European wankers pushing jeans on seaborne tankers. If I die, you know I'm angered. Parasite reptilian bankers, the same ones who protect, the same ones who soon reject me. The chemicals infect me, from late at night inspect me. Yeah. That's all I'll ever say. A dead man got away, but when I remove you, I always come to you. Yeah. Always come to. Maybe they got to me, or I got to myself. The secret safe with me, upon a burning shell. Yeah. Blessed. Anthem for the lost.
I am so excited, everybody. I know you all probably saw this coming. I have been waiting for years to pin this busy, intelligent man down and pick his brain. So this is a wonderful, wonderful person I've known for a few years. And let me tell you something, this interview means a whole lot to me, fam. And there's a couple big reasons for that. Number one, I've known this gentleman for years. And if there's anyone who's ever debated me to the end and actually changed my mind at some point, it's this gentleman here. I consider him a powerful, intelligent person with a big, loving heart. And I got to tell you, you all know one of my most important kind of mantras in life is to surround yourself with people who are more intelligent than you in certain ways. You really need to level up and grow. And so I'm just more than excited to have an opportunity to have this gentleman share his perspective with us, and we'll give him a little background on him in a moment. The second reason I'm so excited to have this interview is because it's an opportunity to share in a way that's not combative and lifts us all up. Historically, we see a lot of interviews where you have, like, you know, Deepak Chopra and Eckhart Tolle and David Icke on one side of the room, and on the other side of the room you'll have Michael Shermer and Richard Dawkins and, you know, Neil deGrasse Tyson, a group of people, and it's set up as if they're there to fight. Now, I'm not saying there's no room for debate and a vigorous challenging of ideas, and we want to see proof of data. I absolutely support that. But I also support a movement towards having these conversations where we're not enemies. We actually all really want the same thing. And so historically, I think Dr. Sherrow and I would probably, if someone else set this interview up, would probably have us on other sides of the screen with a mediator. I did not want that. What I wanted was everyone to understand that regardless of where we come from, we can all learn from one another. And y'all know that I talk a lot, and I'm just going to go ahead and shut up here in a minute. And I'm going to introduce this gentleman because it's not my wisdom I want to share today on these questions. So it's my great honor and a dream come true for years to introduce this wonderful anthropologist we have right here, a good friend, a gentleman I consider a brother, and just a real talented person who has experience in fields of not only anthropology and evolution, but behavior, psychology, and a lot of other things, as well as a lot of experience in nonprofits and doing good things for the community, not just for people, but for animals and nature. So for every reason, I am so thrilled to introduce this wonderful person here, Dr. Hogan Sherrow. Thanks for being here. Of course. Could you do the audience a favor and give your version of the introduction of yourself, sir?
Okay. So I'm just a kid from Oregon who decided when I was 8 years old that I was going to study primates in the wild, and I did everything within my power to make that happen and achieve that goal in 1999 for the first time, studying gibbons in Indonesia. Before that, I had done grizzly bear and gray wolf research here in the U.S., cheetah conservation and baboon research in southern Africa, and after gibbons, moved on to chimpanzees and did that for about 15 years. I started out at Rogue River High School, went on to the University of Oregon, got 2 degrees there, and then finished up my PhD at Yale University a few years later, and continued to do my research and teach at the university level, and still do that sometimes when I'm not running nonprofits.
You're staying busy.
Yeah.
All right, well, we're going to, at the end of this interview, we'll get into some of the activities he's doing presently. First, I'd like to start out asking him some questions about some other things, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
All right, fantastic. Can you please describe for us, from your perspective, where humanity is presently in terms of its evolution, and where do you think we're headed next?
So this is a question that comes up a lot, and there's kind of a disappointing answer on one level, because we are where we are. Evolution has no start point and no end point. So there is no sort of where we are presently in our evolution. It's more to look at what the forces are that have shaped the kind of species we are today. Where we're headed, there's also kind of a disappointing answer on one level, because every species is ultimately headed towards extinction through either adaptation or just dying off. But I think that we have great opportunity for humans the way we are right now to consciously make decisions that alter how long that extinction event happens, how long we have until that happens. I'm not necessarily saying that it could be put off forever, but I think we can change things, but we have to make a change now to make that happen.
Right, time is of the essence. I totally agree. I want to get to some more specifics of that in a second on what you think we can do. Absolutely want to pick your brain on that. Why do you think, first though, why do you think people from all over the world agree on certain moral ethics, regardless of the varying religions or lack of them. In other words, kind of the classic origin of the moral compass question.
Yeah, there's been some really interesting work on this, because it is by and large the case that wherever you go around the world, there are taboos against incest, there are taboos against murder, there are taboos against adultery, there are taboos against lying, there are these kind of moral codes that are nearly universal, if not universal. And some of the most interesting research I found is stuff that really relates to a social contract. And if you think of independent organisms that need to live in communities to survive, they have to have agreed upon behaviors so everyone can at least survive, or has the potential to. If you have to worry constantly about the guy who sleeps in the next room hitting you in the head while you're sleeping at night, because you don't have an agreed upon situation that, hey, we don't murder in our group.
Right.
Then no one sleeps and no one gets anything done. Mm-hmm. And so there's some really interesting research looking at cross-cultural examples. When you look at data from cross-cultural samples, you see that you have the same sort of timeline when rules come into play. Mm-hmm. So kids aren't expected to follow those morals until they hit certain age levels, and those kind of coincide with your developmental stages. So one of the kind of classic landmark ages is 7. At 7, kids are expected to start really following the social rules, and that's when kids are allowed in a lot of non-Western societies to use sharper implements, more dangerous things, because they start understanding the ramifications of their behavior. So what that kind of tells us and gives us some inkling of is that in our evolutionary past, there was a time period where this behavior was reinforced over and over again, and humans have kind of almost a primer in their brains to be able to take these things in and go, oh yeah, murder's bad. Mm-hmm. And that kind of loops back into, and we can talk about this more as we go along, but it loops back into empathy and the ability to think of things from someone else's perspective. Because without that, humans are not humans. If I can't sit here with you and think of what really matters to Justin, what's his life experience, then I'm limited in my ability to work with you, my ability to understand you, to collaborate. So empathy is really kind of, there are no magic bullets, but it's a very special one.
Did you catch that? Empathy. That's fantastic. That's exactly the kind of thing you would imagine it would be, right? Like, hopefully. And it kind of gives you hope. And I've always found you as someone who's so, even though you have a lot of experience in a classical, very heady world, you come from you respect and appreciate that heart condition, and kindness marries into that. So I'll slide that in real quick. How do you feel, like when I say that, right, that I feel like you're a quality scientist who's looking at data from an unemotional point of view, and yet I've always known you to be a person who has a moral compass and someone who believes in what's right and stands for that. Like, how do you address the alignment of those things?
It's interesting, because there are a lot of people out there that think that you have to have some sort of external influence to develop a moral compass, to do what's right for the sake of what's right. I don't think that at all. I think that one, again, human beings have this kind of primer. We have to be taught it, for sure. I remember once talking with a group of parents who were convinced that their little boys would find their way to being loving and peaceful and helping and everything else. And I could not stop thinking about a pig's head on a stick and having the conch. You know, the reason Lord of the Flies strikes such a chord with us is because if you don't have that reinforcement, if you don't have that education, that's what you get. You get no moral compass.
We need to be nurtured by the group, so to speak.
But you don't need to have it in a certain structured way. So there are a lot of people who think that you have to have particular religious values to be able to develop that.
Sure.
I think it's much deeper than that. I think that humans are primed for it. They just have to have the right role models when they're growing up. And I was fortunate to have parents who taught me that it's the same amount of effort to be mean to someone as to be nice to them. And that
Sometimes less, right?
but it's the same amount of effort. But you get a better feeling out of being nice. So, ironically, purely from a selfish perspective, we do better when we're nice to people.
Take that to the bank. It's true. That's fantastic. I have to go then to question 4 here, which is, what do you think of when you hear the words spirit, spiritual, and soul, or even the word God? As that's come up a lot in your career, I know.
Yeah. Honest between you and me?
Yeah. No, shoot straight. That's what we're here for.
I think English words to explain things that people don't understand.
We can leave it at that. You know what
Yeah,
I mean? Okay, it's perfect. Thank you for that. So, how can humanity then, let's go back to what you were mentioning before, how can humanity take steps to start working together more instead of that kind of thing we're used to where we pick teams and fight and maybe don't accomplish as much?
That's a big question.
Yeah.
It really is. And something that social scientists have been working on for decades upon decades. And if you haven't noticed, pretty unsuccessfully. One, I would say that first, you're always going to have teams. It's how our brains are built. We're built to bond with others, and we're built to form in-groups. For me, one of the keys is how you define that in-group. So right now, we define in-groups by all sorts of different measures, right? It can go from the country level, or we can start out the United Nations as an in-group. All the countries that have signed the United Nations Charter are part of the in-group, and that's almost all of them. Then we look at the country level. We don't really do things on continent level, which is interesting, right? We don't think of North Americans as an in-group.
Right.
Right? Because very few Americans think of Canadians as being part of their in-group.
Right.
Even less think of Mexicans being part of their in-group. And while some people call Mexico Central America, it's really not. Just a little geography segue. But how we define that in-group is critical. Right now, we define it on these false borders that we created. And I'm as patriotic as anybody. You know this, right? When we were in high school, I used to be the guy, hey, you don't love America, go live someplace else.
Sure.
And I appreciate where we live. I love where we live, but we have to understand our connection to the rest of the world. So first, as humans, we have to understand our connection to other humans. So when people want to build a wall to keep certain humans out just because of where they were born or the color of their skin or any other arbitrary element, that misses 99.8% of the story. The second thing I would say is understanding that, so go beyond humans and think of our connection to the rest of the animal world.
Right. Absolutely.
If we understand that we are a part of nature and not apart from nature, if we get that really at a deep level, we understand that we're another species of ape. We're a really special one. Really special. I say this to my college classes all the time. There isn't a group of chimpanzees in the world that's sitting around underneath fluorescent lights talking about if they're special or not.
Well said.
But on any given Tuesday, there are thousands of humans doing that.
Yeah.
We're incredibly special. But we are also incredibly deeply connected to the rest of the natural world. And if we can understand that connection, not separate ourselves from the ecological world around us, then we have hope of actually working together, breaking through some of those barriers.
Yes.
At the same time, here's the thing though, most people who go into that, they think of, I would say there are two failures. One, they don't think of it at a deep enough level. They think of it as, they think of the blank slate model. They think it's just the culture, we have to change the culture.
Mm-hmm.
They don't get that, no, humans are a species that has evolved to do particular things. Territoriality and in-group behavior is one of those. And I've studied that deeply for 20 plus years. And that's something that we do as a species. We have to figure out how to make that work for us.
Got it. Instead of trying to clear out the natural propensities, make those work.
Yeah. And I think there are ways, but I think there are errors that are made along the way, and obviously they haven't made a lot of progress. We still have skirmishes, wars, battles break out on a weekly basis. And some of the worst are within countries themselves and the people that were neighbors. And I think that one of the big errors that we make is our misunderstanding of humans. Again, kind of going back to that idea I talked about us being a part of nature and not understanding that humans are an evolved species that has evolved to do certain things. So to be territorial, to form in-groups, to have bonds and with other individuals, particularly males forming bonds with each other, competing for resources. When we see limited resources, it's not the natural inclination for any species, for members of any species, to try and figure out how to best share those resources. The natural inclination is a cliche from the 50s and 60s, keeping up with the Jones and the Smiths and Joneses. Mm-hmm. Right? Doing just a little better than your next door neighbors. That's the natural inclination. We have to move away from that by understanding that that's our nature. And so one of the big errors that I think social scientists make, and I think a lot of folks working on these issues make, is to think of us as a blank slate. That if we change the culture, if we change the society, then people will change. And we don't understand, I think a lot of people don't understand it's deeper than that. It's a human universal. It's a species level thing to form teams and to compete for resources. So if you want to get beyond that, you have to think of us as one giant in-group. You have to think of us as these finite resources need to provide for 8 billion people. Not 300 million Americans.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not 80,000 Medfordites. Or 50 million Californians, or whatever the case is. That's the first thing I would say is getting beyond that false definition of humans as a purely cultural species.
And so what I'm hearing, if I get this correct, is that since humans have a natural inclination to create those in-groups, if we can cycle, instead of trying to fight against that, if we include in that in-group the rest of humanity as well as the planet we live on, the plants, the animals, things like that, that's...
And it's where you see the kind of basis of those groups that talk about one united planet, that sort of thing. The difficult thing there is what kind of course, then you get into what kind of political structure governs 8 billion people to do what's right.
Right.
Kind of tough. Our brains aren't built for that either. So that makes it a challenge.
Wait, I'm not supposed to solve problems 6,000 miles away in a culture I don't understand? I thought that was
the other part that I would say, the second error that I think is a lot of people think, because they think of us as a blank slate, they think all we got to do is change a few things in our culture, tell everyone to hold hands and sing Kumbaya, that they'll hold hands and sing Kumbaya. They think that we're going to do that without rules, and they think we're going to do that without regulations, and they think that people are going to naturally do that. They don't, and I think a lot of people don't understand that in every system, there are always going to be cheaters. There are always going to be people who try and figure out how to not do the work for the payoff.
Right.
So, if you're going to set up a structure, any kind of structure, where you're going to try to increase the amount of peaceful interactions, ironically, that has to come with really strong structural systems to keep people in check. We talked about that moral code that all humans have. That comes from a social contract that's very strict. If you're a murderer in hunter-gatherer populations, one of two things happens to you. You're either outright killed, or you're ostracized from the group, which is usually a death sentence for someone that is reliant on 70 other people to help them survive.
Right.
So you're either killed outright, or you're killed by attrition and denial of resources.
Right.
That's everywhere in the world. That exists because people will cheat the system and continue to get mad and murder somebody, or to plot to murder someone because they want their mate or their farmland or whatever the case is. So we have to understand that if we're going to move forward as a population, as a species, in that regard, and reducing war, you at the same time have to have very strong structure to reinforce peace. It's where I often disagree with the old popular saying from the 60s that some people attribute to Einstein about you cannot simultaneously prepare for war while working towards peace.
Right.
You know, I disagree. I think we have to have strong systems. Doesn't mean we have to have a world police.
Right.
But we have to have strong legal and moral systems that help people when they may want to stray.
I actually totally agree. Right, we have to, from my perspective, I know it's not my interview, but we do need to regulate ourselves personally as well as socially. It just makes, to try to imagine that we don't, like, if everyone would just do the right thing if they had no rules, isn't really realistic presently, is that? I mean,
No.
Let me move on to this. If I may, how much does personality play a role in our beliefs, and where do you think personality comes from? If you could just make that, is there a short version of that?
So personality, it has a huge role in our belief systems. Depending on what type of personality people have, they tend to either be more conservative or more liberal in their political beliefs. They tend to be more religious or less religious depending on the type of personality they have for following authority blindly. So it plays a big role. I think it's hard to quantify how much that really is. So it's difficult for me to comment on it,
Put numbers at it or whatever, sure.
Where personality comes from, I think it's pretty clear at this point that it is a really nice blend of your particular genetic makeup, your genotype, and the experiences you have maturing, so what some people would classically call nurturing environment. So instead of nature versus nurture, it's nature and nurture that makes up your personality. And we're starting to learn more and more that there are more people tend to be kind of born with propensities towards certain personality types.
Sure.
It's not as if in the womb they're sort of identified, you will be type A, you will be this.
Right.
It's more that we're getting clear signals of things like leadership potential, and that's something that they inherit, these propensities for things. And I think propensity is an important word, because it's not that they're destined to act out something. It's not that they're preordained. It's not that there's genetic determinism. It's not that there is pure nurturing that does it. But I think, again, that kind of primering of the system.
Yeah.
And it's easier for certain individuals to take on a leadership role than it is others.
So it's been pretty, the data shows us then at this point that your genetics matter, your upbringing matters, your exposure.
It all matters.
Yeah. Why do you feel so many people, maybe I shouldn't ask it that way, so many people, but I encounter this a lot.
It is a lot.
Okay, why do so many
I know
people
what
are
you're
so
gonna ask.
resistant to good science and new information? Because, you know, even often I'll come across stuff that I think, whoa, man, but I don't want to say no way. What I want to do is go, let me look into that. You know what I mean? That's where I'm at. Why do you think so? And not that I haven't ever said nope, when reality is I probably might have needed to look at that a little bit more. I've done it to you. You said, look at this. I'm like, eh. And then time goes by, and like whatever reason, I look into that, and I think, oh, you know, we've all done that.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, it kind of goes back to what's natural for humans to do. And there's a thought experiment that I like to do when I consider these kind of questions. Think about, just picture a group of humans, say 50 humans, living together 125,000 years ago. What's the most likely way that you're going to survive a scenario? Someone comes up and says, hey, I found this new food that grows underneath these logs. It's everywhere.
Right.
Totally easy to find. We don't have to catch it.
Yeah.
It's more than any of the roots that we dig up, more than any of the berries we have. It's everywhere. And all you got to do is wait for a good rain, and it's everywhere. How long are the people who say, I'll try it, going to survive? If you stick with what you know and what you've been told is the truth,
So good. Right.
you're more likely to survive.
Right. It's gotten you here.
In a modern age, that's not helpful.
Even if that information got you here today,
Absolutely.
it may not have been the best path to survival today, A, and B.
Look, we're dealing with it right now with the idea of moving away from fossil fuels. The generation before ours, oil and oil byproducts were miracles. You can store food in oil byproducts for months on end. You can heat your home while cooling it if you want to. You can drive to work while wearing oil byproducts that keep lenses so you can see. A miracle. Probably maybe the most costly miracle our species ever came across. But to get most people from that generation to think beyond fossil fuels. And you can even bring it back a step from that, having their own vehicle. At the end of World War II, being able to drive anywhere.
Right.
And saying to them, you don't need to drive places now. Right? There's public transport, there's this, there's that. That's not what got them here. So we're struggling every time you present new evidence, every time you present new data, every time you present a new idea. You are literally swimming upstream against human nature for people to accept that. If at the same time that you're presenting those new data, you have forces at work saying that, oh, those data are wrong. Oh, there's a lot of controversy over whether or not that's accurate. Again, who's going to survive in our thought experiment? The one who listens to the people going, those things will kill you that grow underneath the logs.
Yep.
Yeah.
we're patriotic to what we know. Yeah.
And it's a survival mechanism.
Wow. See,
Absolutely.
The survival, and so much comes down to that. Thank you for that. Was wonderful. I really like how you responded there. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Does it seem far-fetched? This is, you knew a question like this was probably going to come from from a guy like myself. Does it seem far-fetched that our ancient ancestors were affected by an advanced species at some point in their/our history?
Yes.
Okay. So what evidence would a quality scientist or researcher like yourself need to validate such a claim? Because obviously in the modern era, I'm be like, yo, this picture is legit. And you're going to go, that could be Photoshop. That doesn't constitute proof, sir. And you're correct. So what is it that, I know, and a quick background, you can find this gentleman. He has done a little bit of work for some people who needed a cryptozoologist expert to look into. Should I tell them that? You want to know?
Go ahead.
He was asked to validate some evidence and claims of Bigfoot in the past. And so it's not that he hasn't done the work and looking into it. But if you don't provide the gentleman with evidence, he's not going to consider it data, and we all know how that works. At least I think we probably should at this point.
Yeah,
so right. So what would it need to, other than, hey, I really believe this picture? What does it take? Real evidence. What do you need?
The answer that's not going to be probably satisfactory to you in any way.
Sure.
Is more than what exists, and more than I think what is likely to ever exist.
But specifically, you saw
Specifically, if there were a cadaver that I did the necropsy on,
right,
or that people I know, because I know a lot of folks in the business, if those people did it and it was peer reviewed, and I know the source of that review, then I would consider it, okay, there's something there.
Right.
So I'll give you an example.
Sure.
Up until recently, we thought that every organism on the planet had DNA that was essentially incredibly similar. Everyone knows the kind of throwaway stat of chimpanzees are essentially 99% identical to humans genetically. A lot fewer people know that lions are 85% genetically identical to humans.
Sure.
That mice are 74, somewhere around there, I think. That bananas share 30% of their DNA with us.
Right.
DNA holds true. You got 4 base pairs. There are only so many combinations you can have. It's amazing the amount of variation you can get, but we thought all organisms did. It turns out that the cephalopods, octopi, and the cuttlefish have very different DNA than most other organisms on the planet. If you had told me that 10 years ago, I would say no.
Right.
They don't. But some really nice work has been done, some really meticulous studies that came out in trustworthy peer-reviewed journals, and didn't hurt that I sent an email off to one of the researchers and asked, but I have no problem believing that.
Right. So really, you're not looking for anything extraordinary. You just want evidence of that nature, of this, whatever would qualify for standard scientific research.
I would say, though, it's good that you use that word, because if you're going to make extraordinary claims, you need extraordinary evidence.
Got it. Because you're going against the tide of a lot of. Right. Thank you for that. I think that clarity is important for people, because it's not like there are scientists out there, like every person who goes to an Ivy League institution and wants to do the work is opposed to learning something new. I always imagine that most folks kind of have a truth seeker in them. They want to know the truth, and it's just we're all coming at it from a point where we have to be able to put these things in steps so we can all look at it together. And I just think that makes sense, that scientists would love to see that. Probably that'd be fantastic.
Okay,
if you
great.
saw real evidence of Bigfoot, you would be psyched, but it's just until you get that. I get that. Thank you.
Yeah.
So I won't beat you up too much about that stuff. We want to wrap this up, and there's probably going to be a part 2 because I love speaking to this gentleman. But we'll make it. We'll get there.
So go back to that.
I will. Okay, so thank you for that. I gotta say, we're at a certain point we're gonna have to wrap this for the sake of time. But I'm probably gonna reach out to a videographer by the name of Brando Commando at some point because I want to hit this guy for part 2 and we can go a little more extended. But real quick, I want to get to some of the end questions here. What research are you currently interested in, and where can we find information on those topics?
Yeah, there's stuff that pops up on my radar every day, and I get interested in it and have a day job and have to focus on that sometimes. So some of the really interesting things in looking at human evolution is starting to understand that there wasn't a sort of neat and tidy population of Homo sapiens once upon a time.
Right.
We now know that it's pretty clear that humans and Neanderthals interbred to some extent. There probably were at least 2 other populations, local populations of humans, and kind of in layman's terms, I would say that there was a lot of loving all over the place.
a lot of loving. We were born in love, people. You hear that?
A lot of that. If you can't be with the one you love,
love the one you're with.
Then be with the Neanderthal you're with.
I almost want to end on that. Love the Neanderthal you're with.
I think that's one really interesting thing. One that I'm always interested in is looking at the evolution of warfare, looking at territoriality and how in-groups and out-groups are formed and what impacts that. And I've started to expand that to politics itself, looking at the evolution of politics. Nice. So, because we definitely have a tribalism sort of environment going on right now, and on both sides of the aisle, and it's almost inevitable in some ways with the way that we're structured. It's unfortunate that we can't break free from that yet. So those are 2 sort of in the more anthropological ways. For years, I've been working on climate change issues. I've been working on human behavioral responses to climate change. So what we're going to see when there are mass migrations, what we're going to see when there are resource shortages.
So looking down the road, not just worried about today, but seeing what's happening today and where that leads to. Because if we don't anticipate that arc, then it's going to surprise us and we can't be having that.
Absolutely.
Right.
And then more practical issues around climate change. So clean energy issues and just trying to get some policy shifts around that.
Real actual change, boots on the ground, not take it from the imagination to reality, really work together. Thank you. Are there on that exact note, are there say a top 2 or 3 things you think that humans can do to create that united positive change in the world? In other words, what priorities would you put at the top? And maybe they're exactly what you just listed, but in terms of what we the people could tackle together, what you think we should focus on tomorrow if you had to say these are the first things to hit, guys?
Well, anyone who knows me and has talked to me for longer than a minute and a half knows that climate change never leaves my brain. To me, that is, to use the phrase that's almost overused at this point, it is the existential threat facing humanity.
Our environment we live in.
We have to figure out our greenhouse gas emissions issues, and we have to curb those right now. I have 2 daughters that I want to see, if they want to have kids, I want to see them successfully parent their kids and their kids grow up. We're facing
left?
Well, not even that. We're facing the possibility of real shifts in demographics, in people's survivability. And I don't want to go too doom and gloom, but that's just the reality of what we're facing. So for me, that's the number one thing, is that the world needs to put aside all their BS, and they need to figure that out. There are definitely, thousands of people in different venues working on that from different angles. But it's what I've said to folks who haven't considered such an issue, such a big issue for years. The point I always make to them is, look, whenever you see the U.S. military and the U.S. insurance agencies preparing for something, you know it's a big deal.
It's on the wall, isn't it? It's not, yeah.
Because their survival depends on forecasting. And when they forecast it, and they put all their marbles in one basket, now you know it's a huge deal.
Yeah.
So what I want to see is, I want to see us move beyond ridiculous debates about whether or not humans are causing it. Yes, we are. Whether or not it's real. Yes, it is. Whether or not we have to do something about it. Yes, we do. We need to move beyond those debates. We need to move to action.
How do we actually clean the water? That kind of thing?
Well, most importantly, how do we limit greenhouse gas emissions? That's number one priority.
Clean energy will be big to that.
Clean energy will be huge to that.
Yeah.
So that's the number one thing that I think we need to do. But kind of going beyond that and in helping that, we've already talked about it. Understanding our place in nature, understanding our connection. You know, one thing that I think people forget is, regardless of how people feel about climate change, without a functioning ecology, Wall Street doesn't matter. The economy means nothing without the ecology. And that's what I want people to start understanding. That's the message that I think you combine that with our connection to the rest of the animal world, our unity as a species. Now you can start talking about how we move forward in a concerted way to tackle problems.
Right. I'm following that. What I'm going to knock you out here. Last two. What can humans, just piggybacking what you just said, what do you think humans can learn from other animals? When we're out observing nature, and I know you've done a lot of that. You've actually been out there in Africa, walking around with apes more than once. Spent a lot of time out there, and
1,000+ hours.
Right. So, what is maybe you could make it personal, or something we could all learn from, like being what we learn from nature.
I think here's the thing: if you spend any amount of time watching really any animal with more than just a nerve bundle, you start to understand that they're thinking about the world. They're thinking about their world and what they're doing. Now that may be simple decisions like, you know, a red-winged blackbird trying to figure out, how do I get this piece of food that I want to access. That could be something as complicated as a crow deciding, how do I take this snail up in the air, drop it on this weird hard black surface, and wait for those big loud things to roll over it and crush it so I can eat the inside. That's a pretty complicated task. But I think if you spend any time watching animals, you realize that they're thinking. You realize that we're not that different. And if you spend any time watching chimpanzees like I have, and you watch them tickle each other and bust up in laughter, you watch them mourn the death of a close ally. And I mean mourn, where they sit in. I watched an adult male chimpanzee, no illness, no reason for him to, for almost 2 weeks straight, spent all day, every day, sitting in his nest, not getting up, and making these low, really mournful sounds. 3 days later, I watched 2 adult male chimpanzees, supposed to be big, tough guys, somersault more than 12 times each in a row down a trail, playing with each other. At the end of each somersault, just grabbing each other's foot. When you watch those things, you realize that we're not that different. And that's really, I think, the main thing we need to learn, is you get a sense of humility from them, and you get a sense of connectedness. And that's what I think is probably the biggest key.
That's huge. Thank you so much for that. So we're going to wrap it here. And can I use your word connectedness and have you connect us to work you're doing here in the community? Plug yourself, your activities, and you do so much stuff. But if you could share with us where we can find you in the good work that you do in the community.
Yeah, so pretty much any climate action you'll see me at. But beyond that, I am the executive director of a group called Winter Spring. And we help people who've suffered through loss deal with their grief. So that's loss of all sorts of kind. I'll be locally on our local NBC affiliate tomorrow morning for an interview about Winter Spring. This next Saturday, we'll have our Seasons of the Heart event at Donahue-Frohmeyer Park in Medford. It's open to the community. We'll do sort of remembrance of folks we have lost and loved ones. Doesn't matter if you have a stone at the Memorial Grove or not. You're welcome to join us, share a story about your lost loved one. For me, that's the work I'm focused on now because I think it's helping us to kind of connect in a whole different level.
Nice. Thank you so much. I got to tell you, the way you have been over the years, I have to give you a final parting compliment. Not just endure my whole reality and life, but it's been a wonderful opportunity for me to have someone who looks at the world differently than me and help explain it from that perspective. And that's one of the things I just really want to share with our audience is I don't want to always just listen, be in an echo chamber. I want people to challenge what I think. I want people to level me up by giving me opportunities to look at things in a new way, or maybe things I've never even looked at, to help create those connections. So you know what I mean. I just love you so much. Thank you so much for being here. And hit me up if you have any further questions. You know what I mean. Maybe we'll have to knock on Dr. Sherrow for a part 2. So again, thank you so much.
Of course, brother.
And we will see you in the next segment. Huh. Okay, I'm so excited right now. This is a very special call out and a very special dreams come true moment for this gentleman right here. So we're only adding one to the call out list, and I have to tell you, it just brings my heart no greater joy than to hop on this camera and just give love to the mighty, mighty, wonderful, amazing light bringer and just fantastic person by the name of Vivian Chauvet. Something super synchronistic, serendipitous, meant to be happened to me recently, and that is I was able to contact a person who I wanted to speak to for years. Vivian Chauvet. She is a light worker like none other. Someone who can teach things to people anywhere on their spiritual path, anywhere on their walk. You know, whether you're newly awakened, whether you're, an advanced light bringer, you're someone who's been around this for a long time. She has something to offer you in terms of knowledge and energy and understanding and presence. It's something special. So I'll tell you real quick, I'm the kind of guy, right, since I was inside all these secret societies for so long and had access to all this hidden information, I by and large can't stand conspiracy theory video stuff. I don't surf the internet, for instance. I'm more like a laser when I want to find something out. But I just don't want to deal with that shotgun mayhem tornado of lies and nonsense that's in the conspiracy theory world on the internet. So what happened was, one day I just got this weird feeling. Even though normally it's I'll just be fake, 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 fake. I'll just be looking at those videos and be fake, fake, fake. And there's so much fake on there. I typed in Arcturian. I just felt moved to do it. And so on the internet, all these things come up. And it was just and I'm scrolling past the little thumbnails. Dude, and boom, in the minute, I saw the moment, in that breath, when I saw Vivian Chauvet's face, her lovely, beautiful, perfect face, I was just, boom, you know what I mean? I had that, wait, I gotta click this. So, this was years ago. So, she'd done a video about 5 years ago, an interview, a 4-part interview series, and it was the part 1 of that. And I just saw it, and I was like, whoa, it resonated, and I clicked that. And that beautiful, amazing person went on to explain just who she is in her life. And I knew, I was just instantly that's it. That's legit. That's real. That I can tell you as someone who's been around the non-human game for a long time. Yo, Vivian is the real deal. So, I knew one day I would just absolutely have to just hug her, and I just selfishly wanted to be in her space for a moment, but at the same time give her the gift of my love and just be able to share her wisdom and her light and her uniqueness with the world. So I'll definitely leave links below, but this call out is for you, my superstar sister, my just long lost soul family friend. This call out's for you. The fact that you reached back out to me the other day and we had a chance to kind of share some energy there was really just, I can't tell you what it did for my heart that day. It just was fantastic. Just made my heart sing. Like I was just getting teary when I saw when you sent me that message, Viv, and I saw your little face come up, man. I was just like, oh, it was just my heart sang. So I hope I'm not rambling here too much, but just this one name, Vivian Chauvet. Please check out her links. Yeah, I want to interview you big time, and I want to share what you have to say and build the bridge as we evolve and move forward. We are evolving and moving forward. It's happening. That popcorn you were talking about, Vivian, it's getting buttery, right? I mean, we're doing this thing. So again, it would just mean the world to me to have that opportunity to get a hug on camera with one of the most magical people I've ever had a chance to even lay eyes on. So, yeah. Hit up your boy. You have my number and my email. We'll make that happen. And so just nothing but love to you and the collective. And we'll get together and we'll be like alchemy like the world has never seen. So that's the call out. Do check out our stuff and all the other links for other people. Okay? So, yeah. Are we on the last piece? We're on the last piece. That means music, doesn't it? Okay, I'm gonna have to get in my car. Okay, y'all know what time it is. We gotta wrap this up with some music. We got an incredible track coming to you. That earlier track, by the way, was called Blessed, Anthem for the Lost. Getting music laid down by the amazing Amicus. Just really just a magician. And this one coming up is actually called +5 Holy Avenger. Couldn't help myself. It's just a F-bomb warning coming up, everybody. It's just something I had to get out of my system about years from the inside coming out. And so bless your ears when you hear it. But yeah, good times coming. So I gotta say thank you again to everybody. We're going to hit up next week is going to be a special all about the People's Club. We're going to talk about funding. We're going to talk about THI groups all over. We're going to talk about proposals and real world solutions to problems we're all facing. And throw some couple call outs there to a wonderful guy by the name of Lance Larson and Kid President. Can't wait to get a hold of you guys. So there's a lot coming up. Stay tuned. I know a lot just happened in the last 90 minutes or so, but hold on to your hats for the next track. It's going to blow it up. I love you guys. I love all of you, women and men and planets and plants. And I can't express how much I love you. It's about 11:11. The night before I launch, 11:11 tomorrow morning. And I just want you to sleep well. I want you to dream big. Dream big, love wins at gmail.com. I hope this was a great hour and a half for you. Enjoy the music. Yeah. Zenja out!
Yes.
I'm certain I can beat you. Amicus, a paladin with them stings, yeah, Zenja, +5 Holy Avenger. Pineal vision that'll see right through ya. Using Naga, I'm like ancient Garuda. Understand, I see through your holograms, me. I know your plans, yeah, but you can't overstand me. That's why you come at me, by back you stab it. Fuck you, I'm like taught with those emerald tablets. They torture me, they throw my DNA. but now they fuck cause they taught me how to play. They tortured me, they stole my DNA, but now they fuck cause they taught me how to play, pa.
Keep listening if you can keep up now. Shenanigans.
I ate an Egyptologist for breakfast. Ark of the Covenant puzzled up my checklist. Monuments left as it moves out west. No, I'm not selling secrets cause I got none left. Bad guys try to keep me alive cause if I die, hard drives rain from the sky. Bad guys try to keep me alive cause if I die, hard drives rain from the sky. They had 100,000 years to try to slay me. Left a trail of bones that could fill up the Euphrates. Bard of the ancient mystery schools. Shoot up Alexandria and left it in stools, kids. They tortured us, they stole our DNA, but now they fuck cause they taught us how to play. They tortured us, they stole our DNA, but now they fuck cause they taught us how to play, pa. I'm a X71 solo wooden quadra-helix hybrid representing SS here, small p, eye of the pyramid of proposition me. For my empathy, intuitive, my lab train me, brain me, I try to horcrux frame me. If utility, pricey, yeah, I piss on MK Ultra daily. Bitch ass Anunnaki claim progenitors, acting like predators and your senators. I'm in the desert of Atacama with your mama operating a Merkaba. Future proofs, past to see what's in store. See for yourself, now I can't do your chores. Now I'ma go kick it with Valiant 4. This pearls before a SWAT is coming aboard. I said they tortured me, they stole my DNA, yeah, but now they fuck cause they taught me how to play. They tortured me, they stole my DNA, but now they fuck cause they taught me how to play, bro. They tortured us, they stole our DNA, but now they fucked us cause they taught us how to play, yeah. They tortured us, they stole our DNA, yeah, but now they fucked us cause they taught us how to play, pop.